All right, we're heading into our 16th chapter, and this week is Thanksgiving, so I've kind of got a little different schedule up. We do not have a quiz this week. You do have a discussion forum that is due by next Sunday evening. We only have two more chapters, and then we are going to do a final. So we're coming into the last couple of weeks of the semester. The final is going to be very similar to the midterm, multiple choice and short essay, and I will give you a study guide prior to that. So that's what we're heading into here. This week is kind of a little different one, and I'm taking it a little easy on you because of the holiday. I hope you all have a great Thanksgiving, but let's cover a little bit of the material that we're going to learn about on this topic of control this week. Okay, so in essence what we're talking about this week is the control process, which goes into many different facets of running an organization. And it's the essential concept is you have standards or expectations or goals. And then you compare your performance versus those standards and take corrective action where you don't meet your goals, where you don't hit your standards. And that's the essence of the model that's going to be discussed. It goes into many different facets. You can see there's a few other points on the slide here. I'll let the text go into that in more detail. But in essence, it's the idea of managing input, process, output, and then feedback. That's the basic model that we're talking about when we talk about control. One of the new, more recent ways that companies look at how they're performing versus the standards or the goals that they set for themselves is the idea of a balanced scorecard. And here it's having managers look at four key aspects of running the company, and they're listed here that from the customer's perspective, how you're doing. Internally, how are we doing? From an innovation and learning standpoint, how are we doing? And then fourth is what are our financial performance criteria versus what we had set for ourselves. So just to show you how that might look for a particular company, here's Southwest Airlines version of a balanced scorecard, and you take each of those four different areas that I was talking about. What were their goals? What were their standards? How did they do versus that? And what do they plan to do about that? Take a minute. You can expand this, enlarge this slide, and get a better idea of what I'm talking about when I refer to a balanced scorecard. So let's just talk about financial performance for a minute and some of the ways that companies look at how they're doing and how they control their cash or their financial performance. Cash flow being one of the first ones. That's a critical element of how a company is able to handle its obligations. Balance sheet, it is really the control of assets, liabilities, and owner's equity. I guess maybe not so much the control of it, but managing how you are doing and evaluating how you're doing. Income statements, that's your profit and loss. It shows revenues and expenses and net profit. Financial ratios of all kinds. There's just a number of them, and each industry has different ones that are emphasized. And then budgeting, which is the idea of having an annual plan and comparing how you're doing versus your plan. Those are some good examples of how financial controls are put in place in an organization. And another important element of control is understanding how you're doing in terms of customer retention. And customers will often tell you, it kind of reminds me of a study I did in grad school. Read a paper called Exit, Voice, and Loyalty, and it talks about customers' options when they're not happy. Exit, they just bolt. Voice, that means they tell you how they're feeling. And loyalty means they just suck it up and stay with you regardless of how you do, and that's about the rarest type of customers. And I thought at the time this was a silly paper I was learning in graduate school, but it turns out understanding those things is critical, and then reacting to it and preparing initiatives that help you address lack of performance versus your standard. That's really important in terms of a business, and they tried to teach me that in grad school. It took me a while to learn it. And this is a relatively new topic and something that increasingly companies are paying attention to. It's the idea of controlling your waste or your pollution, the impact on the environment that you have as an organization. One of the best I've ever seen at this is Sierra Nevada. As they were coming into our community, we got to work with them through the college, and I traveled out to Chico, which is where their headquarters are, and I spent a day with the people that were showing how they monitor everything that goes to the recycling centers, everything that goes to the dump, everything that gets reused and turned into something like methane gas to run some of the equipment or operate the boilers, and all their things that they did. They measured the impact that they were having in terms of their waste and their pollution, and looked for improvements day by day, week by week, month by month. An important thing for our future as we look at how organizations impact their environment, and an important thing to control. Now, that's basically what we're going to cover as far as slides. There's a lot more obviously in the text, and there's some good information in the slides. The rest of the slides are up on Moodle as well. Hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll talk again next week.